The Environmental Protection Agency banned the sale of leaded gasoline in 1996. This resulted in a dramatic reduction in the level of toxic lead in children in what has been claimed as a huge public health success. So why is it that children downwind from the Reid-Hillview Airport in California have elevated lead levels similar to those in Flint, Michigan at the peak of their water crisis? This raises the question, why is leaded gasoline still available for small aircraft? In this week's Ethical Dilemma in Science, we are asking, why is aviation gas still causing lead poisoning in children? In this video, we will examine what is so bad about lead in the first place, why is lead added to gasoline, and what is necessary to get lead out of the gasoline that is used by small aircraft. What is so bad about lead in the first place? Lead causes permanent, irreversible, and lifelong health effects in children. There's no safe level of childhood lead exposure, and the harmful effects include impaired cognitive function causing reduction in IQ, behavioral problems, slowed growth, and anemia. And it's not limited to just children. Effects of lead exposure on adults include cardiovascular problems such as high blood pressure, decreased kidney function, and reproductive problems. Now, the levels of lead in the air have declined 99% since 1980 as the EPA gradually required the reduction of the amount of lead in automobile gasoline from over 2 grams to its ultimate ban in 1996. However, levels of lead in the air near airports remains elevated, putting those residents at risk. Often those that live near airports are in vulnerable, marginalized populations. Why was lead added to gasoline? The addition of tetraethyl lead, TEL, or what's described here as ethyl, to gasoline improves engine performance and reduces the risk of engine knocking or detonation, basically backfiring, that could result in sudden engine failure. The lead is added to the gasoline to boost the octane levels, and octane is basically a measure of fuel stability, and the higher octane levels means that the gasoline is burned more efficiently and more powerfully, resulting in more power being generated by the engine that is burning that high octane fuel. Why is leaded gasoline still used in aviation gas and airplane engines? Smaller propeller-driven aircraft required the higher octane fuel to ensure that the piston engine runs smoothly and the plane has enough power to stay in the air. Leaded gasoline in the form of what's abbreviated as Avgas, so aviation gas, is used in older, smaller piston engine aircraft that normally carry 2 to 10 passengers. There are an estimated over 170,000 piston engine aircraft in the United States that use this aviation gasoline, this Avgas, and they're flying out of 13,000 general aviation airports. They're using hundreds of millions of gallons of leaded gasoline each year, and it contributes an estimated 500,000 pounds of lead emitted into the atmosphere. Currently, now that lead is banned from automobile gasoline, lead within Avgas or aviation gas is accounting for up to a half to 2/3 of current lead emissions. And it's important to recognize that this only affects the smaller aircraft, as jet aircraft do not use this leaded fuel. They have an unleaded fuel that's available for them. The 2023 FAA Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act was passed by the House earlier this summer with a provision that requires the sale of leaded aviation gas. Now, California Representative Zoe Lofgren is trying to get the Avgas section of the act removed so that airports nationwide can transition to an unleaded fuel. As of October 2023, the bill has not been passed by the Senate, and ultimately the House and the Senate must agree on the same bill. In October 2023, the Environmental Protection Agency issued what's described as a final determination. And in this final determination, they stated that the lead from aircraft emissions causes air pollution that, in quotes, may be reasonably anticipated to endanger public health and welfare under the Clean Air Act. So basically identifying this lead within aviation gas being emitted into the atmosphere as being a public health emergency. This final determination means that the Environmental Protection Agency must now take actions to implement regulatory standards to reduce lead emissions from aircraft gas. Now, since the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, approves and regulates the fuel used in aircraft, the FAA now must make sure that aircraft fuel and or additives must control or eliminate lead emissions. Now that we have the Environmental Protection Agency final determination that lead emissions from aviation gas is causing a public health crisis, what is the approval process for getting a new aviation gas formula that doesn't have lead within it? Now, the FAA began an EAGLE program in 2022, and EAGLE stands for Eliminate Aviation Gasoline Lead Emissions by 2030. And so there is an effort already in place to try to do this gradually over the next 7 years. There's currently a approved 100-octane unleaded fuel, but it's not commercially available, and there still is a lower-octane unleaded fuel that is used by a few airports nationwide. However, the fuel refineries are generally resistant to changing the formulations because there are only several hundred million gallons of aviation gas sold annually in relation to 1.5 billion with a B, gallons of jet fuel. In order for aviation gas to be available in the United States, an American Society for Testing and Materials, the ASTM, they have standards committees that examine the components, they examine the properties, they examine how well the gasoline is working. Now, this subcommittee is composed of engine makers, pilots, representatives from community airports, FAA officials, as well as representatives from the major oil companies that operate the U.S. refineries. Now, in this ASTM, American Society for Testing and Materials Standards Committee, there has to be a consensus by the committee. So a single representative can basically block the process or block a competing fuel if they have a vested interest. Now, according to a 2022 report in Politico, Sweden has been using a lead-free aviation fuel for a number of years, but the inventor was unable to find a U.S. company willing to produce the fuel in the United States. More recently, an American company started working on 100-octane lead-free fuel in 2010. They were able to develop the fuel within 9 months, but then it took 12 years in order to gain approval to use in airplanes in 2022. Now, use of this lead-free fuel is expected to start in California in late 2023 or early 2024, with national availability by 2026. Opponents to the shift to lead-free aviation gas argue that the aviation fuel must be held to a high safety standard and has to be at this higher octane in order to ensure that the planes are able to fly safely. In the current FAA Reauthorization Bill approved by the House, it requires that any unleaded fuel that would replace the current leaded fuels have both the FAA approval and the ASTM approval. At the moment, pilots can purchase what is called an FAA, Federal Aviation Administration, supplemental type certificate that allows them to use a fuel other than the aviation gasoline, but the language in the FAA Reauthorization Bill would exclude the use of new unleaded fuels that did not have the ASTM approval, which would result in many of the efforts to generate a unleaded fuel for aviation, or basically airplanes, has a significant hurdle to be overcome in order to gain the approval so that it can be used in airports nationwide. So with this background, we now get to our ethical dilemma in science for this week. Should leaded aviation gasoline be banned before the FAA target of 2030? How do you motivate gasoline refineries, engine manufacturers, and airports to transition to a less harmful fuel? Should government subsidies be provided to reduce the cost of the safer unleaded fuel? because these unleaded fuels are going to cost more than what is currently available that has the lead within it. And then finally, should there be taxes on the leaded fuels that are adjusted to fund remediation efforts to eliminate the lead from the environment or eliminate the lead from areas downwind of these airports, or to support public health initiatives for these individuals that live near the airports with these higher levels of blood within their systems? Thank you for viewing this week's Ethical Dilemma in Science. Please see the description below for additional information and references. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. You can also leave a comment below with your thoughts on this topic or suggestions for future topics. Thank you and have a great week.